Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Deals for Dentists podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. Through these podcast episodes, I'll be interviewing dental professionals and companies and aim to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. Welcome to another episode of the Deals for Dentists podcast. And today we are joined by Dino Watt. And Dino Watt is a PhD, a passionate husband and dad. He's also one of the most exciting business trainers and the author of 4 #1 best-selling books: The Practice RX, Hire and Fire Like a Boss, Selling Through the Screen, and Mastering Virtual Consults. He's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and TEDx. And as a high-performance practice advisor, Dino has frequently been referred to as the Tony Robbins of private practices. His goal is to help business leaders and teams create more passion in their life, be more productive in the office, and create more profit in all areas of their life. So, Dino, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Eric.
So, Dino, do you help coach dentists, specialists, or all health professionals?
Yeah, I started off with all health professionals. I actually did chiropractors was where I first got into this industry, then dentist, some financial planners, anybody really had a private practice. And my business has really gone more the way of dentist is probably about 10% of my my company, and the majority of it is specialist in the ortho.
Okay. Now, do you consider yourself a consultant, a coach, a mentor? How would you categorize yourself?
Yep.
Yep, and yep.
Yeah. I a lot of people just because I think it's what they understand language wise, they call me a consultant. I don't come in with a preset plan of here's my thing that helps you get this thing. Like here's my scripts for better answering phone calls, or here's my way of getting insurances to verify. Like I don't do that. I do consider myself more of a coach because I come in, I see where the challenges are. I ask you what you want, because I think that's the most important question we can ask anybody. So I find out what you want, and then we reverse engineer what you want to get you better results. And I often say this, I basically magnify leadership and I unify teams.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you find that, if you asked me, what do you want? Sometimes I don't know.
Yeah.
And do you find that, with you mentioned chiropractors, orthodontists, dentists, anyone in private practice, we come out of school and we have absolutely no training in how to run a business or how to manage HR or staff or any of that. So a lot of times we just feel something is not right. Yep. And I don't know what it is. Do you find that a lot of professionals are coming to you and you ask, what do you want? And it really is, I don't know, but I know something's not right in my practice.
Yeah. They typically don't say, I don't know. What they'll automatically do is they'll go to the things they don't want. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'll say, so what is it you want? What if I could wave my magic wand? I can give you anything you want. What do you want? And they'll be like, well, I don't want this person to do that. I don't like that. And they'll talk about the don't wants, because everybody can figure that out. So you're right on the nose, Eric. Most people don't really know what they want. So my job is to kind of filter through the clutter of what they don't want. And then from that say, okay, so now I get what you don't want. But what do you want? Like if you could have when you're sitting by yourself in the car driving home, if you're one of those, and there's, I find it's either one or the other. It's either you can put your head on the pillow and fall right to sleep, or you put your head on the pillow and you can't sleep because you're thinking of all the things you wish would be happening in your office, right? I said, but if you're sleeping at night or trying to go to sleep at night and you cannot sleep because you're just wishing it would be this way, what is that? Mm-hmm. And there's a great book called The Challenger's Cell that actually talks about this idea around a lot of people don't know what they want in general, not just doctors or business owners. They just narrowing down what they actually want is a big challenge. That's why I believe it's the most important question you can ask yourself. And the way to overcome that is to tell people what they have seen or what's possible. And when people hear what they want, when you tell them what's possible, hey, would you like to be able to come home energized every single night and time with your family, not feeling like you're completely exhausted and don't have the effort, energy, or desire to spend any time with your family? Would you love to walk into work every single day feeling like you just love being here? Would you really like to know that every single one of your team members is an advocate for you and is on your side, not somebody who's just there punching a card to get a paycheck? Well, they hear stuff like that, and then they'll automatically hear somebody go, "Oh yeah, I want that." So sometimes you have to give them the buffet for them to realize what it is they want. And there's stuff they can be like they don't want. Sometimes I'll ask doctors, well, do you want to increase your business by 20% over the next 12 months? No way. Like, that would be way too much work. I'm happy with the way my business is now. Oh, okay, cool. Like, I don't get businesses always that are in distress. I get people who just aren't quite sure what they want, and we figure that out, and then we reverse engineer that.
And do you find that a lot of these clients are just not happy? They're just going into work, they're not happy, and maybe it's the culture isn't what they want it to be. There's kind of a negative vibe, or there's some drama going on. Do you find that a lot?
Yeah, the majority of people that come to me don't necessarily have a bad business, if you will. It's that it's just not quite working for them. I believe that everybody leads in one of three ways. I call it the 3Ds, either disdain, default, or design. So disdain is the people who just blame everybody else. Well, it's the economy, it's my competition around me. This person's doing that. I can't help it. The government, whatever. Everybody's complaining about that. That's the person who's disdain, and they're the hardest to help because it's always everybody else's fault. They love to live in the blame world. They're addicted to blaming. Then there's default, and default is people who look like they're doing pretty good on the outside. It's the majority of most people, like whether it be in their business or their marriage or their life, but they're the ones who are doing, quote, fine, right? Or I can't complain is another quote that I'll hear. I can't complain. Who am I to complain? That's a person who's in default. They're making money. If you were looking at them from the outside and be like, oh yeah, I think they're doing okay, but there's just something inside of them. This is my favorite client. These are the guys who are doing fine, but just inside of them, they're like, they want more. And so, yeah, there can be the problems with whether it be team members, gossip. And by the way, one of the biggest challenges is because there's a disconnect, right? All your colleagues that are listening to this, my clients, they are high performers. They went through school. They put their nose to the grindstone. They figured it out. They did the equations. They studied hard, and they believe that's what most of the world should be doing too. And so they get into a situation where now they're leading people who do not have that mindset. Maybe if they're lucky, they'll have 10%, maybe 20% of their team members who have that mindset, but the rest of them do not. And that is a disconnect. And that's where frustration comes, because you're just like, why can't they just think the way I think? Why can't they just do that? Why do I have to repeat myself 30 times? And that's a bigger frustration, I think, even than not being taught how to run businesses, not being congruent with people that you're working with on a daily basis.
Now, talking about that, what would you say? Do you have a process that you recommend for hiring? Because, how can it all go wrong? You have an interview with someone, the interview is going great, you think you have a great employee, and they start working there, and everyone has different backgrounds, everyone has different issues going on. Not all the employees see eye to eye. Do you recommend during an interview a personality test? What's your process there?
Yeah, key phrase: hire 5 times slower, fire 2 times faster. Most people hire way too quick. Like you just said, you have an interview, they're great in an interview. Maybe you have another interview, working interview. Oh, they're really okay. Everybody seems to be fine with them. Dave Ramsey, the money guru, right? He does a 20 interview minimum for every team member who gets hired, because he says, let people tell you, if people talk long enough, they'll tell you who they are. And too often in our industry, we're in desperation mode, right? We're in we just need to fill a body. We just need to put somebody in there. And that always ends up wrong. So personality tests are fine to let you know kind of what their characteristics are. The challenges of personality tests are like every personality test, other than maybe the Colby, is based on pseudoscience. There's a great book out there called Personality Isn't Permanent by Ben Hardy. And he debunks everything from Briggs-Myers to DISC to all of those, not in a negative way, but just saying, look, there's no science behind it. All of our personalities change. The Colby is a great one because it tells you how people work, is their way of working. So for example, I'm very much a quick start person. I'm not an investigator or a researcher at all. So if you were also a quick start person and you and I were on, we were trying to figure out a project, we would come up with amazing ideas all day long and we'd never get anything done. So if you have too many people in your office with the same type of personalities, that's not a good thing. You want to have a good mix of everybody. But the two things that I look for when it comes to hiring people, number one is knowing how they work. But number two is, what is their why? Why are they here? Why do they want this job? Do they just need to pay bills? And it's okay. It pays a lot of money. It's a higher pay than, working down at the local burger joint. Or are they passionate about healthcare? Do they love helping people, have great smiles? Do they have a story? Is their story that, man, their dentist, their orthodontist, their doctor, their chiropractor saved them? They helped them so much. They got them out of pain. They made them feel good about themselves. What is that story that they can connect? And I know it sounds like a lot. It's like, are we really going to do this in our interviews? Yes. Like, spend the time. It is worth it. There's a calculator out there that you can look up online, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but it's something like, when you mishire someone, meaning that you hire someone and they're not a fit, it's something like the cost to you as a business is like 3 times their annual salary for every bad hire. I never, ever look at people who are having struggles, I should say, with a team member as the team member being the problem. They're not the problem. They are the symptom, right? Your team members not being cohesive, that's a symptom. Gossip, that's a symptom. It is not the problem. The problem is your hiring process. And I'll even go deeper, not knowing who you want to hire. Who's your ideal team player? What do they look like? How do they act? What are they passionate about? What are their characteristics? If you haven't read The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, then that's something everybody should read. But going beyond that, like, are they a fit for you? I do this thing on stage. Maybe you've seen me do this, where I talk about my litmus test for doctors is, if they walk in the morning and they see, let's just say, Sally, and Sally's walking, into, and she says, "Oh, good morning, doctor." And you say, "Oh, good morning, Sally." But the next thought in your head is, "Boy, I wish you'd quit." That's not Sally's problem. That's your problem. You're out of integrity. Poor Sally is going about her day thinking everything's fine, even though she's late all the time, even though she gossips, even though she's not a fit in your mind. Sally's doing nothing wrong. You, as the doctor, are out of integrity. And I think hiring somebody is an act of love. I think firing somebody, or I call it loving them into another job, is an act of love. That was a long answer to your short question.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with hire slow and, fire, you said twice as fast.
Yep.
Because, and also the job that you're trying to fill is, extremely specific and important. So let's say you have someone that has a really bubbly personality and you're hiring them, but you're putting them in position to be an insurance coordinator, which is a very kind of detail oriented, quiet position. It may just not be a good fit.
Yeah. Money, right? You're dealing with money. So you might be hiring somebody who's really, really nice and pleasant to be around, but they have major money issues. Matter of fact, I had a great doctor once who decided he would only hire people in the financial coordinating position or insurance position who came from banks or financial world, because they have no problem talking about money. The phrase I use often, this is something for all your doctors, remember, is this: nothing will ruin a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one. Mm-hmm. And that's crucial. Like, if you're going to put up with that, you're ruining all the, somebody emailed me just last week, I saw it on Facebook. They said, Why don't doctors realize that the reason they're losing all their good people is because they're keeping so many bad ones? It's like, yeah, they don't. So
Yeah. Tolerating poor behavior is not a good message. And the rest of the staff is going to see that, and it's going to, spread throughout the and ruin the culture. And you said it really well that, if you hire too quickly and it's not a good fit, and then you have to start all over again, that is just a killer to the bottom line. And do you find that now, because of the staffing situation, people are desperate to find staff and they're just hiring anyone?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's a really weird situation. Well, first of all, I believe it's going to make us as an industry kind of pivot a little bit more and see what parts of our office can be remote. The generation that's coming up right now, COVID helped out with this, is they're realizing they have options and they can work from home and not have to go into an office. Matter of fact, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank was just is doing an interview that I was watching where he was talking about this, how even in his company, they've realized that so many people do not want to come into an office anymore. And they're willing to, live or work from their office because they know they can, or work from home, because they can do all the things they need and not have to come into an office. They don't have to commute. They don't have to leave their family. They don't have to go into an office and work with people they don't want to work with. There are parts to our businesses that can still do that. You mentioned a moment ago, your insurance coordinator, your financial, why do they have to be in the office? You can have them being remote. So you have your favorite employee that their spouse gets transferred or they need to leave and move to another state. You don't have to let go of them anymore. You can say, hey, let's find a position where it works for you. Maybe you're just on phones and you're being our directors of first impressions. Well, you can do that remotely. They can remote log into your computer and do your software and schedule stuff. So I think this isn't just Dino having a philosophy. I think it's something we're going to be seeing more and more of, because we're going to have that necessity of shift. Of course, there's certain things we can't do remotely. I get that. But what part of your offices can do that? Now you can take the time to actually hire the right person. But absolutely right now, because there's a shortage, because there's a shift, we are looking at having to be more intentional instead of panic. And that's what's happening, is a lot of people are freaking out and they're just getting, the warm body. They're getting, somebody actually sent in a resume that was coherent. Yes, let's go with them. Right. So it's a challenge.
Or someone actually showed up for the interview. That's,
yes.
Yeah. I think that is a great point, that, all your staff doesn't have to be physically on location. You can maybe do your first one or two interviews remotely.
100%.
And then, if they're a good fit, have them come in for another interview.
Eric, I'm so glad you said that, because with the technology of Zoom and Skype and FaceTime or whatever, there's not a single doctor out there that should be doing the first or second interview live. You've all been in a situation where that person has walked in and within a minute, you knew this was a fit. And yet now you're going to spend a half an hour with this person of your time's more valuable than that. Do it online. It's in my book, Hire and Fire Like a Boss. It's what that was a book from 4 years ago that I totally recommend doing that. I'm like, no, get out of your own way, do all your interviews, Skype and Zoom, until you're ready to bring them in.
Yeah, I actually, I love your book, Hire and Fire Like a Boss. That was actually, I think I read it on Dental Town. Someone recommended it.
Oh, cool.
And then I picked it up, and it was such a great read. And for me, it was when I was first becoming a practice owner.
Oh.
And I really learned that, that's my fault. If I have a staff member that is, not a good fit, or we're tolerating poor behavior, like you mentioned earlier, that's not on them. That's on me.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit more about that and your book?
Well, that book, Hire and Fire Like a Boss, actually, I'm in the middle of updating it right now because of COVID, right? I mean, I actually in that book talk about Skype more than I do Zoom, because that's what I was doing the whole time. So there's a couple of things we're going to be tweaking on that. But yeah, that actually is a book that was a program that I did first. I shot a whole series of videos around that idea of hiring, fire, training on how to hire and fire. And I thought somebody had said, hey, why don't you make that into a book? So I quickly made that into a book. Just you can actually tell sometimes when you're reading it, that sounds like I'm having a conversation with you as opposed to an actual typed written. But my latest two books, I think, are really important for that idea that you just out with remote. So I took one concept, which is selling through the screen, and I split into two books. So for the dental and ortho world, the book is actually Mastering Virtual Consults. And that's all about how do you take a lot of what you're doing and take it online instead of having to be analog with them and be in front of them. There's a lot of great examples in there of how to do that in our industry, what parts of the industry can do that, from consults to follow-up exams that don't need to be in the chair. So I think it's, and plus there's a ton of sales ideas in there for your hygienist, great body language stuff in there. And I just wanted to kind of share with people how they can actually evolve their practice into there. But my main book that I would suggest everybody get is the Practice RX. That's the one that's like, hey, you want a better culture, you want to be a better leader, you connect better with your team, go with the Practice RX.
That's the one we should start with.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I was just thinking that's a really good point that, with remote now and Zoom and Skype, you can do your interviews, but also with patients, like you mentioned, you could have that follow-up and not waste chair time and do a quick post-op follow-up, virtually instead of having them come into the office. You could save them time, save yourself time, and you could, be more productive.
If any of you dentists are doing Invisalign, like, you should totally be using virtual for check-ins. If you're not using something like a dental monitoring or a Grin to monitor that, you're wasting so much money. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a 6-week post-op for a clear aligner case yesterday, and everything was going great. And she was in and out of there in like 5 minutes, but I had a 20-minute time block set aside, so it would have been a lot more efficient if I did it online. I saw on your website it said that one of your goals is to reverse the direction of divorce, addiction, and suicide amongst private practice owners by helping them become leaders.
Yeah.
Are those three things a major issue in dentistry?
Oh yeah, that's my mission for what I do. My why is to contribute to a greater cause, and so my mission is that I would assume most people listening to this know that suicide is a huge problem in our dental profession, and it's unfortunate. It's not necessary. It's something we need to talk about more. But I think it comes from, and when I tell lay people who are not in our industry, that they are all shocked. Like, why dentist, right? And I believe it's a couple of reasons. I believe you could go with this simple answer of, hey, you're in a profession where not everybody really wants to come and see you every day, and you're causing pain to people. And you could go with that. But I actually believe it's what you were talking about earlier, which is you went through a ton of school, you focused on what you wanted to do, and you built a business. You went out there and you built a business, either associated for a while or you started your own business, you bought into a practice, and no one taught you anything, not just about how to be a business owner, but how to deal with people, how to connect and communicate with various personalities, how to understand that these people are not going to think the way that you're thinking, how to lead people and help them find their own motivation, but be the person to help motivate them. Nobody taught you that. And man, being an entrepreneur alone is so hard. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and the roller coaster of emotions, of financials, of the world, like what's happened in the last 2 years, it's crazy hard. It is not for the faint of heart. And then you add on top of that people who might not have actually chosen to be entrepreneurs, but figured this is just the path. You buy a practice or you build up a practice and have all the other stuff. That's so hard. So I believe that's where it comes from. So yeah, so divorce is a challenge because it puts so much stress on your marriage. Most doctors will start off a practice and hey, honey, you're available. I think you could be our bookkeeper, our, payroll person. You could be our, maid, into housekeeper, whatever. And then as the practice grows, they kind of get shoved out, or they're stuck in it and it causes stress in the relationship. And addiction, right? I mean, addiction is an easy one to do as a doctor, writing your prescriptions, having access to prescriptions. It's a problem in a sense of it shouldn't be. It's one of those like dumb problems that people have. It's like, really? Come on, guys, let's get together and talk about this. And I remember I was at a speech a couple of years ago, and I just talked about this straightforward, and people did not like that I was talking about it. Like you could tell in the audience, they were like, come on, we're here for CE. Like, dudes, what good is your CE if you're hopped up on drugs, or if you're in the middle of a divorce? Like, geez, that stinks. So
Yeah, and you hit some really good points there. While we're in school, we're not even taught how to talk to patients. We talk over the patient, we talk about the patient, and you get into the real world and you have to wow these patients. They're a moving target. You're working on, this 1 millimeter little space. You have to keep them comfortable and give them this great experience. And you're drilling on their tooth and they're paying lots of money and they don't want it to hurt. And you have to have, almost like an actor, and kind of be on and, be in a good mood. And no one wants a tired, sad dentist working on them. So you got to kind of, almost like act it up. And personally, as an introvert, that was exhausting for me.
yes.
It took all I could to do that, and then go from room to room to room, and do it over and over, for 8 hours. I would sometimes see, 8 patients or 10 patients in my column, and then there's hygiene patients.
Yep.
And doing that over and over and over again for a career is exhausting. It's physically and mentally exhausting. So I really think that you nailed it, that we really should be talking about this more, and openly help each other and engage with each other.
Eric, that's a great point. Like, if you're somebody who is, like you said, an introvert, it's to me, it's the equivalent of a sports person, right? Who's got to go and play the game, right? They got to be on for those 2 hours, that hour, whatever it is. And there's a lot of energy that's exerted to do that, because they got to hype themselves up for it. If you're an introvert and you have to spend your day glad handing people, making them feel comfortable, small talk even all day long, that's all that energy, but for 8 hours, right? And every one of the patients, and it's exhausting. And we don't think through this of why, and it's hard to fake it. It's hard to fake it.
Oh yeah. And I would get home and I would just be exhausted and stare at the wall for an hour to kind of re-energize. Whereas, some people out there, they're extroverts and they feed off that energy, and, they can talk all day. But, for me personally, that was, I would say, is one of the hardest parts of the profession. Dino, before we wrap things up, I want to ask you one final question.
Sure.
What advice would you give to, any of the young dentists that are just coming out of school, or any young entrepreneurs out there?
Geez, the first thing I would do would really make a map and a goal, a vision of what you want. Like, be clear on what you want. Be clear on the type of office you want to work in, what kind of energy. Don't be just another clone of what you see out there. Know that it's okay to put your personality into the practice, but know what you want, like written down, not just an idea. I do this with all my clients. You have to write down your vision. Nobody wants to follow somebody who doesn't know one. Nobody. And so have a very specific vision of what you want. And you might not get it today. You might not get it in a year or 2 years, but have that vision out there. As a matter of fact, I like to break down my visions into 3-year increments, because it's actually, you could see that in your mind's eye. 5 years is too far out. 10 years, way too far out. 1 year is too quick. So about 3 years. So just sit down and go, okay, in 3 years, where do I want to be? And then follow it up with why. Why do you want that thing? Why do you want a $2 million practice? Is that just something that sounds good for you? Or are you really understanding how much work that's going to take? Why do you want 5 employees, 10 employees? Why? When you understand your why, the how will figure itself out.
Man, that is good stuff. Great advice. I had a friend who he he opened a practice, then he opened up another one, and then he opened up another one, and he was just toast. And I said, he said to me, I did it because that's what my friends were doing, and it
That's
was
right.
kind of expected, and it's not really, I don't think what he really wanted to do. So Dino, that is such great advice. Again, Dino Watt, thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
How do we get in touch with you?
DinoWatt.com. You can see me on all the socials. If you want to see me be a little silly and crazy, you can go to TikTok and see me there. All my handles are just DinoWatt.com or Dino Watt. Like there's not a lot of us out there with the name Dino Watt. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and just email me, Dino@DinoWatt.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
As always, I hope everyone finds this episode interesting and valuable. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the Deals for Dentists podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our weekly newsletter so you don't miss any of our upcoming shows.